Kabir says, anything in excess becomes a poison. Speaking too much is harmful, and remaining silent beyond measure is also harmful, just as too much rain destroys the fields and too much sunlight burns the earth. Life blossoms only in balance. Kabir teaches us never to underestimate even the smallest thing. A tiny straw under your foot seems worthless, but if that same straw enters your eye, it brings unbearable pain. In the same way, never insult the poor or the weak, for their hurt can pierce deeper than you imagine. Kabir says, what is the use of growing big like a date palm? It stands tall but gives no shade to the traveler, and its fruits hang so high that no one can reach them. Greatness is meaningless if it does not benefit others. The Hindu loves Ram, the Muslim loves Rahman, and for this, people fight, shed blood, and lose their lives. Yet none understand the real truth. Kabir reminds us God is one, names are many. A true seeker follows the command of the Guru in thought, word, and action. Kabir says, only those who obey the Guru cross beyond the cycle of birth and death. Those who search deeply find the truth. The ocean of wisdom is vast, and only the brave dive within. Kabir says, I was afraid and sat on the shore. That is why I found nothing. Kabir says, those who keep trying always find something in life, just as a diver who enters the deep waters always returns with pearls. But the one who fears drowning remains empty. Standing on the shore, Kabir teaches, the real rosary is the rosary of the mind. People keep rotating beads with their fingers, but their hearts remain untouched. If turning beads could bring God, then the pulley that draws water from the well, which rotates hundreds of times, would be closest to the divine. True worship begins in the heart, not in the hands. Kabir says people read countless scriptures all their lives, yet never become wise. But the one who understands just 2.5 letters of love becomes truly learned. For real knowledge is not in books, but in the depth of the heart. I went searching for evil in others, but found none. When I looked inside myself, I realized there is no one more flawed than me. Self reflection is the beginning of wisdom. If Guru and God both stand before you, whose feet will you touch first? Kabir says, bow before the Guru first, because it is the Guru who showed you the path to God. A Guru is far greater than the mythical philosopher's stone. The stone can turn iron into gold, but the Guru can turn a seeker into someone even greater than himself. People keep turning the rosary for ages, yet their mind remains unchanged. Kabir advises, leave the beads in your hand and start turning the beads of your mind. That is where real transformation begins. Kabir says, as long as you live in this body, give. For once the breath leaves, this beautiful body becomes mere dust and nothing remains yours. A true saint is like a grain sifter. He keeps what is valuable and lets the useless drift away. The world needs such souls. Everyone remembers God in pain. No one remembers Him in joy. But if you remember God in happiness, why would sorrow ever come? Kabir prays, O Lord, give me just enough that my family is cared for, and no guest leaves my door hungry. Abundance is not in excess, but in sufficiency. The disciple is like mud, full of impurities. The Guru's knowledge is the water that washes away dirt accumulated over lifetimes. In one moment, the Guru can cleanse the sins of many births. Stones and bricks are piled to build a mosque, and the muezzin shouts loudly from the top. Kabir asks, is God deaf that you must scream to reach him? Kabir says, everything happens slowly. The gardener may pour 100 pots of water, but the fruit appears only in its season. Patience is the law of the universe. Words written on paper are only theory. Scriptures are records, not realization. True spiritual vision cannot be written. It is lived wherever I look. I see only my beloved. I can keep teaching endlessly, but you must understand within your own mind. All letters exist inside the ink pot, but the ink pot does not exist inside any letter. This world lives inside God, but God is far beyond the world. Knowledge, devotion, detachment all lead swiftly toward the divine. But the bliss of self realization belongs only to the soul and God. No one else can enter that sacred union. One who has experienced the truth cannot be fully described, says Kabir. How can anyone define the signs of a soul who knows God through direct realization? Such a being sees no division, not between saint or sinner, not between pure or impure, not between mine or yours. He becomes the same in vision, the same in heart. If there were truly a second God, then arguments would make sense. But duality itself is the root of conflict. Just as two blind men cannot admire each other's dance, people trapped in spiritual blindness cannot perceive the one behind all forms. A eunuch cannot understand the joy of union between a man and a woman. In the same way, an ignorant mind cannot grasp the bliss of a realized soul. Kabir says he even feels ashamed to speak of the highest truth before the spiritually blind. Just as dancing before a blind man wastes the dancer's art, a wise person listens to guidance and reflects deeply. But what beauty will a blind man's wife adorn herself with? Whom will she try to attract? Without vision, all decoration is meaningless. When blind men touched an elephant, each described it differently based on the part they felt. None saw the whole. This, says Kabir, is how the ignorant speak of God, each limited by their own narrow understanding. Even scholars who claim great knowledge search for God outside themselves, while the divine dwells closer than their own breath. They recite scriptures, quote logic, and talk of experiences, but these are only faint shadows of the real bliss. In front of the infinite, Kabir says, I am incapable of describing anything. Book learned pride makes a person believe they are the doer, the controller. Such ego blinds them from God. A simple worldly man who at least fears the divine is better than the scholar who worships his own intellect. Only a mute can recognize the gestures of another mute. In the same way, only an enlightened soul can understand the joy of another enlightened soul. Ask a mute to explain the taste of jaggery. He cannot. The sweetness is real, but words fail. So it is with the inner experience of God. When the realization of the divine rises in the heart, all joy and sorrow disappear. The mind becomes steady like a flame in a windless room, calm, bright, untouched. The true knower becomes fearless. He has no doubt about God. But if he falls under the spell of his senses and slips into worldly pleasures, even he must face the consequences of his actions. A rich man can become poor, and a poor man can become rich. But the heart filled with God is never empty, never lacking. Inner fullness remains forever. Inside, the divine is one, but outside, people create endless philosophies and differences. When God is realized within, one sees the same one everywhere, inside and outside. Spiritual truth cannot be captured in writing. It must be seen, it must be lived. When the bride and groom finally meet, the entire wedding procession loses meaning. In the same way, once the soul meets God, all external rituals become insignificant. The body is only a burden. The truth is beyond the body. Kabir says, all who claim to be wise are still wandering in doubt. Real wisdom begins only when God is seen and experienced within.